Thank you so much for being here. And today we have the honor of welcoming Philippe, Paige, and Joe. They're all DAO experts, and yeah, let's give them a welcome. And actually, before we start, I would like to know, people sitting here, how many of you guys are interested in working in DAO or contributing to DAO? Contributing, yeah, participating, yes. That's even better, yes. And we have a founder. We have founders here. So let me introduce the speakers. So we have Philippe. Philippe has been a DAO veteran, and he's been a contributor at dOrg and also at various other DAOs, and he's also a frequent test speaker on DAO, and he also writes on DAO. So if you're really interested in DAO, you should check him out on the internet. He writes a lot about DAO. And in his Web2 life, he's also a SaaS founder. And we have Paige here. Paige is Franco-American, and she is the founder of Frontier DAO. Frontier DAO is a DeSci that, so DeSci is decentralized science DAO that really promotes scientific research and innovation. And Paige also has more than 20 years of experience in sales and marketing in tech. And we also have Joseph. Joseph hails all the way from Australia, and he's a private consultant and researcher for Web3 startups and also traditional financial institutions. So he works a lot with the companies on how to implement decentralized technology.
Seriously, that's the best bio I could never make. That's awesome. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And before we dive deeper into DAO, so I'm actually really interested in how everyone got into DAO. So what were the things that really drew you to DAO, and how did you get involved? What has your experience been so far contributing in DAO?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I've been in the DAO space for 7 years, and initially, the reason why I was interested in the crypto space was that there were self-organized networks. First of those was Bitcoin, which is like a proto-DAO. And I was considering doing an exit to community. I don't know if you're familiar with this concept, that you have a startup or an organization that is traditional and you want to actually transfer it to a community. And I found out that DAO tooling, which is not really, which was not at the time a DAO tooling, but let's say blockchain technology could actually solve the number of issues that you face when you want to transfer a traditional organization to a community. So that's how I started to be interested and engaged in the space.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here today. So I think I went from wondering what a DAO was, the DAO. I'd heard the word and the buzzword, and I was like, I think I really have to figure out what that is. To, that was maybe 2018 or so, to realizing that DAOs actually offer an alternative to bootstrapping a startup. So the DAO tooling really showed me that there was a different way, especially when you're doing technology transfer, trying to do commercialization of technology. It showed me that there is an alternative way. You don't always have to try and go to a VC with your hands outstretched and say, you know, can you please invest in me? There was an alternative way to crowdfunding, and that's to me, for a startup, when you have a vision, it opened up a lot of potentiality.
So my journey began back in 2012. I started building mining rigs with my father and my brother. We were in the very early days, and we've pretty much seen every single blockchain, crypto, NFT, DAO, GameFi craze there is. Equally to that, this has been pretty much the only industry in my life I've ever worked in and ever actually contributed to. So coming from a purist form and then seeing, like, let's say, managed investment schemes, I see it from a crypto Web3 point of view, as opposed to a managed investment or traditional finance, seeing a crypto from that perspective. So my kind of journey began back from a technical point of view and a research point of view, reading Nick Szabo's work from the 90s. And so looking at like vending machines as the early DAOs, really, because smart contracts and DAOs are pretty much or really we haven't really seen a DAO yet, like what a DAO is meant to be and look like. I still feel like we're quite far away, but again, it makes me very excited to see all these different contributors and builders getting us closer and closer and closer until the point I can go to a cafe and I can work there, serve there, eat there, make money there, and equally spend that same money in the same place. So, cafe DAO, make it happen, someone.
Very cool. So it's really interesting to hear how so many of you got into DAO so early on, because clearly this year DAO has been a huge buzzword. And probably like people say DAO is the next NFT in 2022. And so what do you see as currently like the biggest challenges for DAO scaling, especially when a DAO still wants to remain decentralized as possible? Okay. If anyone.
Go this way, okay. So if I think about the biggest issues facing DAOs right now, I would say civil attacks. Like, if you actually look at all the DAOs in the world right now, what is it? 90% of all the value of a DAO is always taken by about 1% of the people, 10%, 1%, more or less. Chainalysis did an amazing Web3 report that released in, I think, early July. Highly recommend looking it up and reading it. It's amazing and very concise. But for issues, that's the first one. Because if we know for an actual fact, it doesn't take much for people to cartel and pool governance tokens to then take over a DAO, that's problematic. So in some instances, when I advise clients, I actually say, how about you incentivize a blockchain, a new like layer 1, right? Decentralize it, incentivize people to use it, stake whatever it's gonna be, and do it that way instead. Because that's actually a little bit more secure right now. Until maybe, let's say, we were talking about soulbound tokens, proof of persons, there's a very good reason why Satoshi made 1 CPU equals 1 vote. 1 person equals 1 vote. There's also quadratic funding. There's different methods to actually go about ensuring you protect your DAO, but DAOs always end up being centralized. So if you have different protocols in place to mitigate that, so let's say governance voting caps, that's kind of where I put my money in.
Yeah, I have to say I'm 100% with you on that. I've been trying to focus just in my excursions into working and contributing to other DAOs, even simultaneously being a DAO founder, co-founder actually, is I'm focusing on the human systems architecting. So it's not that complicated really to put a DAO in place. Some of my friends at Colony, which is one of the DAO platforms where you can set up a DAO, they're fond of saying, look, it takes 5 minutes to set up your DAO. So I think oftentimes when we hear that buzzword DAO, we think, oh my gosh, it's all kinds of smart contracts. I need to know how to write Solidity in order to do that. But no, they've actually made it very simple. So what Joey was talking about is actually really spot on, because I feel where the real challenges are today is to, like I said, do really strong systems, human systems architecting to avoid that tendency for oligarchy to take over your organization. If indeed decentralization is your true mission. So.
That's a good point. That's a mission.
So my perspective is that scalability, that was the question, right? What are the issues with DAO scaling? And so the first question I would ask would be, do we need scaling? Because there are all kinds of DAOs. You can have small-scale DAOs and large-scale DAOs. And if you have a small-scale organization, like typically sub-Dunbar number, I don't know if you're familiar with that, like less than 150 people, you can know each of the people in your community, in your group, and then you don't need necessarily to scale, but you have ways to coordinate with a small number of people that are completely different than when you are dealing with thousands or dozens of thousands of people, obviously. And DAO tooling and DAOs help to scale to a large extent with ways that are trustless. That's why we use blockchain technologies. But you don't want necessarily to use trustless mechanism if you have a small group. Actually, you may want to have high trust network, high trust connection instead of trustless protocol in order to grow your, or to have your organization working properly. So yeah, so when I hear that this word scaling attached or associated with DAOs, the first thing that really strikes me is that scaling is not necessarily an objective in itself. Then, of course, the second thing that comes to mind is that we've been talking about coordination across DAOs for a number of years now. It's still a hot topic. We've been going as an industry or as a movement through different tricks or mechanisms in order to make it work better. Like suddenly we realized that we would not be able to make decision with a large group of people using voting, which is a very poor decision-making mechanism. So we need something else, like for instance, fractionalizing the organization, splitting in little groups like sub-DAOs or squads or whatnot. There are so many names. And then you realize that when you do that, maybe you have small groups that don't need the blockchain to coordinate, but how do you coordinate all the groups together? And you stumble upon all the issues that we're seeing now with DAOs like, I don't know, Maker, for instance, and you know, this kind of, or Index Corp, where you have a number of sub-DAOs and issues between the sub-DAOs or issues with respect to strategies that has to be common and overhaul, and each little group that has its own perspective. So I would say that probably scalability, when it's a good problem to have, when we really want to scale, bump into the issue of coordination at large scale. Yeah.
Yeah, that is super interesting. If scaling is not the ultimate goal of DAO, whereas a DAO's ultimate goal is actually to organize people on a more fundamental level. So how I see this is that they will have fundamental changes in the society as well. So what do you see as some of the fundamental impacts that DAO can make in the society? Right.
So I agree. Scaling is like, you can hit scale if you hit security. Because security scaling over time is just stability at, you know, a stable delta, right? We're gonna get there. Repeat the question for me. I wanna make sure I get this answer completely correctly. The question was?
Impacts, like larger impacts in the society.
It doesn't have to be about impact. Like if you break down the word decentralized, autonomous organization, right? We can put that in anything, right? How about this? Someone here, go make this project in a second, okay? I'm gonna give you some alpha. How about you make a non-discretionary internal bonus DAO at a company? Every single company in the world should have a non-discretionary bonus DAO, meaning that everyone generates a token, or let's say some level of data, to prove that they've done X job across all verticals of the company. That means by the end of the year, it's guaranteed you receive that bonus. That's a DAO. It is literally just distribution. It's more like a function. But what I'm really excited for when we talk about impact is that we do not need to have inefficient economies. Like simple things that just do not require people anymore. Make a DAO out of it. So impact over time would probably be more efficient economies. But again, how do you identify a person within that economy? That's when, as I forgot who mentioned before, like soul-bound tokens and decentralized society comes into play. So the biggest impact for DAOs is just making the world more effective and lean. Like look at Aave. Aave is beautiful and amazing. That's an entire banking institution in a smart contract. Great. Is that a DAO? Does it need a governance token? The reality is that I can go deposit and I can lend. Sorry, borrow. DAO. So the impact, I guess, if I'm gonna have any kind of words on impact, maybe a charity DAO. Why is that really a thing yet? Like properly? So someone here, please go make that. I would love to go see that and invest into that. That's something you can actually quantify, impact, and then actually deliver a result based on output of outcome. Maybe trees, which is a project that I love to work on and see. Desalination of water, might be pollution. Like these are things you can quantify with rich data. You can ramp that data over a very complex piece of infrastructure, and then you can provide that on chain. There you go, you have impact. So it's just making the world more efficient. Like it's like making a better wheel for a car. Sorry, I wish I had more to say on that. Like impact is going to come if it depends who's going to use it and how they're going to make it.
Actually, Joe, you have a very interesting opinion about whether DAO, like what is DAO's impact on the labor market? Do you want to elaborate on that? Like,
definitely. Well, what's the impact of a point of sale now, like an automatic point of sale? It's making the economy more efficient. If we don't need a certain role in play, we shouldn't have it. Really shouldn't. We should obviously restructure and make better labor markets, just as we had every 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years for eternity. So it's no different now. The difference is that now we can move to a structure where people can actually spend more time on things that actually generate happiness, right? Look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If we can solve a whole entire section, it makes universal basic income more possible. So if I can go to a cafe, and I mean it, and I said it before, I really do mean it, I would love to have a situation where I know I can go to a cafe, I can actually work there, I can buy something there, and my governance token is generated by impact there. Impact being, let's say, making food. For every meal I make at that cafe DAO, I get more governance tokens, let's say 5x. But if I spend, obviously I lose. I could literally eat, live, and work my entire life there if I was the hardest worker there. That's kind of an interesting concept that I'm really keen to see, and I haven't really seen implemented or spoken about just yet. So in the labor market, you're going to see more efficient economies, you're going to see cooler jobs, and actually more shareable economies, which is one of the conversations we had earlier today.
Paige, I would like you to talk more about Frontier DAO, the DeSci DAO that promotes the innovation in scientific research. So for you, like, what do you see as your DAO's role in this society apart from being a DAO in Web3 space? And also, because what I see about your organization is that it's really aligning personal incentive with the common good. So in a way that your DAO is really solving the problem of the tragic of commons. It is something, so can you tell us more about what is the value behind your DAO and what kind of impacts your DAO wants to make?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So our DAO, we do have an ambitious mission, and the co-founder is actually a nuclear physicist. So that's where the fusion energy comes in to play. So I love that you brought up public goods. Actually, even just this last week at ETHCC, there's been a lot of discussion about public good. And if you take the example of Constitution DAO, right? Constitution DAO harnessed a number of people, actually not that many, I think it was only about 2,000 people, raised $43 million, $47 million to purchase a copy of the US Constitution. And they did that in 1 week. So if we as a collective of people can achieve something like that, why can't we fund science that same way, right? Why do we have to always defer to, again, I'll point the finger at VCs, but what I mean is, why do we always have to defer to these big, what we know of as financial institutions, in order to fund and also benefit from big investments like that, right? What if, I like to ask too, like for example, what if SpaceX were a DAO? Right now, and I mean, I love SpaceX, and I think what Elon Musk does is absolutely fabulous. But why should one entity control that amount of technology, which in fact actually originates from the collective? All the technology that's been developed by NASA is actually theoretically public domain. You have to apply to license it, but it's been developed by taxpayer money. So the actual fundamental engineering that has been developed by SpaceX, now no doubt Elon's brought a huge amount of his brain power and brain trust to that. But why should one entity, why should that be the only option to us? Why can't we reflect upon a different model so that a company like SpaceX could theoretically be owned by a DAO, could theoretically be owned by 1,000, 2,000, 100,000 people who have this mission of like, hey, I want to put the next woman and the next person of color on the moon too. It's actually, there's nothing that is holding us back. So that's kind of fundamental.
So just to add to that point really briefly, because of legislation, the reason why people can't actually, like SpaceX can't actually hire anyone outside of America is because it's actually dealing with advanced military technology. So that's kind of the first reason why you can't do like, maybe like DAO for research. Like if anyone knows Golem from back in the day, Golem was one of a token that was generated, so you could stake a computing power and it would work on complex functions and formulas in the back end. And some of those were for healthcare, medicine, research. Like that's the kind of projects that are, and if you DAO that, which is just a blockchain in of itself, then 100% develop a universal brain trust where people can commit their literal brain power or the computing power, and then maybe generate governance tokens based on, let's say, impact, education, and maybe a few other kind of experience points. And I guess you can have a pretty cool DAO and some pretty cool engineers, scientists working on it. Who knows?
I appreciate that you brought up that point, but we have to admit though too that space exploration, which is just an example that I brought forward, it doesn't have to be space. It can be any scientific pursuit, from biotechnology to AI to machine learning to fusion energy research, anything. But also let's keep in mind that huge moonshots like that are almost always a collective. We can actually even look at, and I'll cite the long-standing, maybe right now in pause, but the long-standing cooperation between Roscosmos and NASA and ESA, actually too. But another, before I pass this on to Philippe, because I don't want to, overreach, but ITER in the south of France, in Provence, which has been the big fusion energy reactor for so long. Now, that's a cooperative of 8 major countries, right? So we have China, we have Japan, we have Germany, we have Australia, I believe. We have the US. So they've all invested billions of dollars and their brain power and their governmental might to collectively achieve this goal. So if we can do it on that scale, let's evolve and see if we can maybe do it on a people scale too, less of a governmental scale, but a people scale. Anyway, I'll stop there.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know what was the question again.
I would just have one for you then, because I know you're really involved in org tech. So it's not just DAO, but more about the technology of organization. So can you talk more about org tech and what is org tech's role in maybe accelerating the adoption of DAO, or what kind of societal impacts org tech has, a larger impacts it has?
Yeah, I guess that this was a word created by, I forgot his name. He's going to hate me. But the idea was like, we're talking about health tech or food tech. So actually enabling organization to work better, faster, coordinate better, could have its own brand, so to speak. Like it would be org tech. But yeah, DAOs are technology augmented organization, let's call it this way. So they use technology supposedly to work better. I think that what is important to note is not so much the technology itself, because I don't know, everybody who is interested in DAOs has probably some kind of idea of what we're talking about, the fact that we're talking about the way to manage their identity, the voting, the reputation, all this kind of stuff, the reward system, the incentives. I think that what is important, and you touch upon it, is what are we talking about when we mention the word organization. Mm-hmm. And the gentleman there said, is it participating or is it working? And I think it's a very important point, because spontaneously, in many settings, in many places, when people think about DAOs, they think about DAOs as companies, which is not necessarily the right way to look at it, and definitely not the only way. And frankly, often as companies, DAOs suck. They don't work as well. Maybe that's one reason why actually SpaceX is a company and not a DAO. I'm not talking about the fact that we can fund together as a DAO science, but I'm talking about the fact that in order to build something of the magnitude of SpaceX in terms of industrial project, you need a way to coordinate people that we do in companies that we don't know how to do yet in DAOs. On the other hand, we can do stuff in DAOs that are different. We can do commons. We can manage common resources together according to a set of rules. And that does not lead us to actually being subordinate to a central point of power, which is very important politically speaking. So from my end, OrgTech is more a political concept actually than a business one. And everywhere we're thinking about coordinating in order to create public goods, commons good, and commons, you know, as it has been defined by Elinor Ostrom, which is a community that governs resources according to a set of rules. This is where DAOs shine in my opinion.
Very nice.
So if we had a corporate board meeting and we put that on, and we allow people just to vote on with their mobile phones and not have to really attend the meeting, and it's recorded on the blockchain, would you consider that a DAO, or is that just work? Or it's not even, that's neither. So right now, the biggest, I guess, use case for me is that a lot of board meetings, people don't want to attend, it's time wasting, they just want to submit their vote, and if we had the blockchain, if they'd use the blockchain, they could do that, and it would be all recorded, and it could be legal. And I see a huge adaptation for that, but at the same time, would you consider that a DAO?
Probably not, because even the term board meeting is a trigger for, you know, disqualifying it as a DAO. I don't know why. I need to think why I would react this way. But I think that we're trying to use the term in a way that is transformational, that we think that this kind of organization have something different that we haven't seen before. And as a result, when you think of blockchain technology as an incremental enabler, as something that just reduces the friction, just like mobile phone or web app, then it's not really the point, right? We're looking at DAOs as a way to do things that we couldn't do before, like scaling a consensus, scaling a coordination across distance between people that are not knowing each other, and still capable of managing resources together. So for me, ideally, I'm more thinking of a DAO without a DAO tooling as a Wikipedia, for instance. This is a network of people coordinating together and actually managing and creating and growing a common resource, and actually without even having the blockchain for that, right? Blockchain is supposed to help them to do it better or faster.
Yeah, I think what Philip was getting at is that DAO is not really about whether it's a business concept or a political concept. It's more about it's a fundamental way to organize people. So it really encompasses different areas or different definitions. So I think one question I have, it's probably a burning question for people, for our audience, is that for people who want to contribute in DAO or who want to create a DAO, do you have any tips or best practices for them?
Fair. That's a good question. I just need to think about that one for a second, okay? I can give some real alpha.
I'm going to say something very that you can see everywhere, but I think that is the probably not very original, but makes total sense. If you're interested actually engaging with the DAO, just do it. one of the virtue of DAOs is that most of them are really open, transparent, open in a way that you can see what's going on, and open in a way that you can start engaging without going through anything complicated, without committing anything that is heavy on your side, like resource or money or whatnot. So this is so easy that you just have to open the door and actually do it.
One other question though, for the DAO,
One second.
is it
Maybe
better?
maybe just wait a little bit. Just wait.
Oh, sorry,
We'll have
sorry.
questions right now, okay?
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I would say there are those DAO platforms. There's DAO Stack, Aragon, Colony, and on most of them, you can actually set up your DAO using testnet. So that's actually what I did, because we were going blind. We were definitely coming from almost government, well, basically government contracting perspective. And so we set up our DAO initially using the Rinkeby testnet. Now I believe they're phasing out Rinkeby, and so now it's girly, but just play around with the testnets, and then you can actually set up your DAO, play around with it, play around with the smart contracts, see how the voting stabilizes. You can even issue a token using testnet. And then once you've played around with that and done your test drives, then you can just basically delete it all, just get rid of it all, and then really set up your DAO on mainnet or Polygon or whatever you want. But actually, my big thing though too is what I would say is that I feel that the conversation has gotten so focused, not this conversation, but just in general about DAOs, that it's become so focused on the smart contracts of it all. And at the end of the day, it's people. DAOs are run by people. Whether there's a smart contract there or not, an organization has to do with people. And people aren't resources, people are people. So I would say that, you really need, anybody interested or wanting to undertake the DAO space as a contributor or as a founder or anything, we really need to focus on getting the human systems architecting right, and definitely the workflows too, so that people want to stick around and still be part of the collective and feel good about it.
So I disagree, because a decentralized, autonomous organization is indicative from even Nick Szabo, 1996, smart contracts, from making a digital market, is about literally removing people from the conversation. But if you can have the power, the proving mechanism, the value add that comes from humans, as long as you can actually provide that, quantify that, ramp that, put it on chain, and then obviously allow people to interact with that end result, then it would make sense. But the reason why we're looking at decentralized autonomous organizations is because smart contracts are a thing of beauty. They guarantee outcome based on input, unless you're the DAO, and obviously there's a lot of other kind of problems there, but we're looking at something that is leveraging the beauty of smart contracts, ensuring that outcome. Because if I put my money, I stake my time into a DAO, and I get a governance token, and then I vote, I now know for a fact that will happen. Not it might happen, it will happen. So certainty, trust, and traceability, on top of that transparency, is what makes this entire industry beautiful. So remember, if we have a better way, or an improved way to start ramping off-chain data on-chain, which is going to be coming more so with blockchain 3.0, and it's an amazing innovation, that's when I can definitely say yes. But until then, a blockchain is an immune system. Anything that's not part of the immune system is very hard to get into in the first place. That includes the proof of work from a person's point of view. Going on to the question around how can you interact, build, two different pieces. If I'm a person that wants to work at a DAO, right, go join a Discord, really. It's that simple. Go join a Discord, spend some time for free, literally start interacting with anyone. Learn a lot, read documentation, read white papers, add value in a think tank kind of method. Then over time, you will find yourself embedded into the ecosystem. You probably will have already some kind of governance tokens rewarded to you, kind of like an ESOP, and similar to like an employee shares option plan. But if you're a builder, I'd probably look back at 2013 and think about all the people who made a lot of blockchains for the sake of blockchains. Because a lot of blockchains are pretty much very similar to a lot of DAOs we see today. And I would probably say making a new layer 1 is probably a better idea at some points, because you can actually have proof against Sybil attacks, which again is the entropy state of DAOs. We will always be leading to a Sybil attack in the end at this point in time. So if you are a creator, really consider, should I make a DAO? Should I make a company in general? Or should I make a blockchain? Random idea right here. Governance tokens generated by, let's say, well, there's a DAO I'm actually working on. I won't call it every part of it, but they allow you to stake a certain subscription. Stake one subscription. And you want to make a DAO. And so I said instead, how about we make everyone a node? And the proof of stake is actually your capital, which is your investment, your subscription on a monthly basis. Because that you can actually protect over time. And you can ensure transactions, people have ramped the data, and anything that's been uploaded can also be audited as well. Whereas a DAO, it's very moment in time. So if you're a builder, really consider those three. Do you really need a DAO? If you're going to make a DAO, how are you going to do it, and how are you going to make it everlasting? And the third point, maybe look at making a blockchain and go look at the days of 2013, 2012, and all the blockchains that don't exist anymore and why they don't.
Thank you so much for your tips. And now let's open the floor for questions.
Yeah, so my question was, Wyoming and Vermont, they recognize that as legal.
Cool.
In Europe, Malta, what's the point? If it's a DAO, isn't it decentralized? Why do we need recognition?
So why does the government need to register companies?
Well, with the DAO, isn't the whole point of a DAO to not become centralized, to govern itself? And so, in your opinion, do you think that these registrations are beneficial, and what benefits could come? And for example, in Europe, if I want to set up a DAO, should I think of registering in Switzerland or Malta, or should I just get started?
Great question. Forward thinking. Yeah, 100%. I really do think if you can register a DAO somewhere, probably do it in your own jurisdiction, just in case if there's any kind of maybe breach of laws. But I would say that when you're looking at why a government needs to register companies, it's traceability, auditability, right? I was in a think tank, must have been a few months ago, maybe 6 months ago, around how do you UBO a DAO? Meaning how do you find the ultimate beneficiary owner of a DAO? We had some of the best lawyers in the country. We couldn't really come to an answer. But with a registry, it would make that possible. The answer we kind of came to is actually the developers, funny enough, as the biggest beneficiaries. Multi-sigs in the contract, more to the point, they can actually have the greatest benefit, failure, and control of the technology. So that's kind of where we came to. But registration's not bad. Legislation's not bad at all. It's just doing it the right way that ensures growth, funding, and obviously amazing new projects and ventures that change the world in a positive way.
I'd like to weigh in on that. That's a fabulous question. It's a really spot-on question. And the reason being is that the big misconception about DAOs is that they're a legal entity, and they're not. They're just a set of smart contracts. So you mentioned Wyoming, and it's actually Delaware. Yeah, and BVI, British Virgin Islands, is also now very popular. But basically, when you wrap your DAO in an LLC, for example, then you're no longer legally exposed if anything should happen. You've probably all heard about the stories about some DAO treasuries getting hacked, which is really sad. For example, Harmony just got hacked for like 100 million. So as long as they're wrapped in an LLC or some other kind of legal entity, their contributors and their founders cannot be held liable for any of the losses or the breach. If you're not, then you can be held responsible. So I would recommend, if you'd like to do a deeper dive on that, that actually Jack DeRose, who's the founder of Colony, he's got a couple of really great videos. You can find him on YouTube that he talks exactly about that. He's like, a DAO is not a legal entity. So good question.
Yeah, so first of all, I'm going to use the opportunity that I have the mic to say that unfortunately I have to go. But just to answer, actually, yeah, this is a kind of playbook, the playbook now. Probably every significant project being built as a DAO has a legal personhood and legal structure being built. And the idea is, the reason, the purpose for that is what Paige just said, liability, that's one. Limited responsibility is something that we get out of this structure. So think about it this way: we don't need, as a DAO, as they said, it's a set of autonomous smart contract. The DAO itself doesn't need the legal personhood. What we need is, as participant to the DAO, people who live as well in the real world, or the world of human beings, and the world where a law applies. We need protection because of that, right? So that's the reason. And so there are a number of additional reasons. The second one is to be able to do some transaction with other companies and traditional organization. Very often it's super complicated to actually send an invoice to a DAO that has not legal existence. So you are incapable of actually transacting and doing partnership with those kind of structures, which can be a problem depending on what your DAO does. And the last thing is IP and everything related to that. If you want to protect it, you can protect anything from a cypherpunk point of view on the blockchain. But if we're talking about real-world assets, then you need something else, right? So that's the reason. I'm sorry, I have to.
No worries. Thank you so much. Actually, our time is up as well. So unless anyone has one more burning question, or anyone has a question, we'll take one last question. Yes.
So the rise of DAOs, what about the rise of BDO for DAOs? Necessary tools, they need to be automated, or they need to be third-party consultants?
Well, if there's a market for it, like, why not? I don't think there's any specialized answer to that. What about the guy or the girl who's making new specimens for corn? It's probably consultants. Good for them. But people probably need that service. I am very critical, and the next panel that I'll be speaking on is on training and mentoring. I'm extremely critical about a lot of the input that we receive as a community from experts, my peers who've been here for a long time as well, and some of the falsehoods you speak about, and equally some of the positives that you should probably mention more of. So when I say, if you're going to consult on anything blockchain, and remember, if you put anything on smart contract, like anything on a chain, mom and dad always said, anything you put on social media will be there forever. I can guarantee you'll be on Ethereum forever, okay? So if you make a mistake there, it will be left there forever, for eternity. So maybe if you're consulting and there's an issue, and the issue will be there for the rest of your life. So be very careful. Any other questions?
All right, great. Thank you so much for the wonderful discussion. I hope you took something away from this. Because she wants some pictures. Yes, but I think we also have.
It's a little dark because of the screen. There we go. One, two. Hope it looks okay. All right. I try to get the whole thing.
I think it's back to back, no? That's why these are the speakers. Are you speaking on the next?